as we bring in from Winnipeg Sports Talk now our good and longtime friend, Hustlerama. How you doing, Andrew?
What's going on, Roddy? What are we going to talk about today? USFL? Get into some spring football chat? Wow, that was something last night, huh?
We will wind it up with that because I want your opinion on it. But hey, okay, what happened. I want your take on whether you think it was an intentional or not, and also how it will impact this series, if you don't mind, because if everybody's not forgotten, Montreal now leads at 1-0.
Yeah, dude, there's a lot to unpack from that. I mean, listen, did I think he meant to hit him? Yes. Did I think he intended to injure him? No. Anyone that knows Mark Scheifele knows that is, completely out of character. And I think it's part of the intensity of the playoffs, the frustration that goal essentially iced game number 1 for the Montreal Canadiens. And, it was a split-second decision that went really, really bad. Listen, I know he's going to get suspended. We know there's a hearing today. I'm kind of with you. I expect it to be somewhere in the neighborhood. I think it's going to be 2 games. I'd be surprised if it's more. I don't think he's going to get off with less. But honestly, I mean, to me, this is about the result of the hit less than the actual hit itself. I mean, if it was a clear headshot, we're having a different story. Listen, the guy skates 180 feet back checking, lets up at about the hash marks. It's going in. He's got a split second, and he decides to finish a check. It was a bad decision. There's no doubt about it. It was a dangerous play, and I think everyone's main concern is that Jake Evans will be okay. But, Scheifele's going to have to pay the price, both to George Parros as well as when he returns to the series. But I'm not here for any of these hot takes like get him out of the game. I mean, I think it was an unfortunate result. But Rod, I have to admit that, I mean, if Jake Evans gets up after that hit and whops Mark Scheifele in the face and there's a bit of a scrum, are we having these conversations? No. I mean, I think this is more about the unfortunate result of what happened than any malicious intent on Mark Scheifele to injure one of the Montreal Canadiens from where I'm sitting.
Well, we'll see how George Parros takes it. But as I was saying to somebody this morning, there's a harsher penalty for attempted murder than for manslaughter. If you kill somebody you didn't mean to, that's one thing. Oh, I was trying to kill him. I just didn't successfully do it. Intent. And he didn't intend for that result. There's a really big difference there, but I still think it'll be 2 games. And I know that may be hard for some people to follow, but I think it's a big part of how this should go. Now to the game. You didn't see Montreal going up 2-0 as fast as they did. I certainly didn't. What happened there with a team that's coming off a sweep?
Well, listen, it's been an unfortunate trend for the Winnipeg Jets that, after long periods off, they don't start very well. And listen, they had every reason to be ready to go to jump on a team that had just finished a grinder of a 7-game series and take advantage of the 9 days off that they had to prepare for the Montreal Canadiens, and unfortunately they didn't do it. And Paul Maurice, Rod, going into the game said, I believe his quote is, the first 10 minutes might look a little different than the second 10 minutes. Unfortunately, the first 10 minutes really cost the Winnipeg Jets last night, and they were playing catch-up for most of the game. I mean, there were some good things from a Jets perspective to get back in and push it, but unfortunately, there's just a huge cloud around this series going forward because of what happened with Mark Scheifele on Jake Evans. And just back to your original question about how this affects the series, I mean, I think it's massive. I mean, first and foremost, never mind all the stuff going on around it. If Mark Scheifele's not in the lineup for the next couple of games, with the potential loss of Dylan DeMello, Paul Stastny wasn't in the lineup. We talked so much about the Jets' great depth at center. Well, that takes a huge hit if your number 1 and number 2 guys on paper going into the series are out. So how the Jets handle that in the short term is going to be, very significant if they're even in the series when Mark Scheifele returns after however many he gets. And then there's the other side of things where, I mean, we know that George Parros will have his judgment, but then there's also how this affects the games going forward. How does Montreal handle it? I mean, Mark Scheifele's not a fighter. Does he have to fight when he gets back on the ice? Who does that? And how much will that take away from what the Jets are trying to do? And that's focus on winning hockey games. There's a lot to unpack from this game last night, Rod, and we'll be talking about it for a while.
Okay, I can't leave it. I can't leave it alone. I want to move on, but Habs for Life watching in Vancouver says it was charging. Well, the penalty was 5 minutes for charging, but my charging is not slowing down. right? Deliberately charging somebody. You said it. He laid off at the top of the circles. He tried to change direction. I don't think he was charging. Do you think it was charging?
Well, by the book, there's a very liberal adoption of charging. If you go into the rule book, and I don't have it in front of me, it can be described in a number of ways. I mean, the bottom line is he was skating his ass off to get back and trying to prevent the goal. And in the final, whatever it was, 15 feet from the hash marks laid up, knowing that, it was probably going in the net. But again, you're going that fast, you don't have a lot of time to make those decisions. I think by the book, it was charging. I mean, what else was it? I mean, I don't think it was a headshot. I mean, it wasn't principal contact to the head. It wasn't boarding. So I think charging was the right call. Listen, I'm not just sitting here saying that this was a clean hit. It wasn't. It was late, and it was unfortunate, and resulted in an injury, and that's why Mark Scheifele is getting suspended. But I think by it was charging more than anything else. But the funny thing is, Rod, I talked to a few ex-players today, including a Montreal Canadian from last season's team, who I expected to be, very irate about what had happened, and said, honestly, he did not have a problem with the hit. That's the playoffs. He's finishing his check. It's game number 1. And it's more about the unfortunate result of what happened to Jake Evans than the hit itself. Was it clean? No. Was he intending to injure Jake Evans? I don't think so. But this is a huge problem for the Winnipeg Jets going forward, as far as how they handle the games when Mark Scheifele's out, and where the team is when he gets back into the lineup, and what's going on with the series.
Paul Maurice saying after the game it was a very unusual play. And none of us have seen it. Right. So we all, I think, are entitled to our opinions. If people could keep the name calling to the minimum, that would be nice. Jay Nordic on YouTube says it technically wasn't charging, nor was it late. Hey, we could talk about this forever. Jen at the Four Seasons says the break hindered the Jets. It probably did, but Andrew, we all know you want to get your series done as soon as possible. What are they at fault for sweeping the Oilers? Look at the Golden Knights. Let's just switch gears there. They had nothing left in Game 1 against Colorado, clearly, and then last night they deserved better. Did you stay up for all of that one?
Oh yeah. Got a little bit of OT, some free hockey, and this series is unbelievable. I mean, just watching what the Avs are doing right now, and I'm with you. Going in, I was very high on Vegas. I mean, I think that they're sort of built for the playoffs. They've had their experience getting close. I thought this was going to be their time to maybe get over the hump, but that Avalanche team is just an absolute wagon right now. And, it's interesting comparing the game ones from between the two series, because you're right. Vegas did look like a team that just got pushed to the limit in 7 games. And the Colorado Avalanche took advantage of that. That should have been the case for the Winnipeg Jets last night. But credit to the Montreal Canadiens for the way they came out and sort of continued their momentum from that big 7-game win over the Toronto Maple Leafs. And unfortunately for the Winnipeg Jets, they just were not able to ramp it up the way they played against the Edmonton Oilers, against the Montreal Canadiens to start things off, put themselves in a hole, and now they're in a bigger hole in the series, down a game, and most likely without their number 1 center for a few, depending on what George Peros has to say this afternoon.
I'm sure you will spend 0 time at 1 p.m. Central on Winnipeg Sports Talk. No, on the United States Football League. And their announcement this morning. Here was my take earlier. You probably didn't see it, or maybe you did. I'm like, can we just get one of these leagues playing? I don't care to talk about how it affects the CFL or the XFL, USFL. Get on the field, guys. I think more football, the better. More jobs for everybody. And you remember the old United States Football League, man. It was a trip. It was fun.
Oh, we're talking like the old USFL, Herschel Walker, Doug Flutie, Donald Trump running the league into the ground at the end. I mean, hey, listen, it was an interesting competitive league to the NFL. I mean, they sort of went head to head. There was the big antitrust lawsuit, which they won, and they got $1, and it essentially ended the league. I'm with you, man. I mean, I'm a football guy. I want football. I care mostly about the CFL and making sure that we have fans in stands and the 3-down game starting on the 5th of August. But absolutely. I mean, and Rod, we've talked about this before. I was a big XFL guy. I was really into the reincarnation of the league when it started last year. It was encouraging to see, the crowds they had in DC, especially St. Louis, Seattle. And it was unfortunate what happened with the pandemic. They were sort of the first ones to get the short end of the straw from COVID-19. So listen, I'm with you, but my focus, of course, is far more right now going into the next couple months on whether we're going to get the Canadian Football League going, because that, I think, is what's most important to certainly everyone watching in our two provinces. We want to see the green and blue go head-to-head at some point this year.
Oh, wouldn't that be something? Buddy, can you give a plug to Winnipeg Sports Talk if you don't mind? And by the way, I love the fact how many people tell us that our shows play off each other. I love it. There's something there. As soon as we go off the air, you go on. Tell them where they can find you.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, Rod's going 11 to 1. We fire it up right at 1 o'clock on our YouTube channel, which you can subscribe to or find. Just simply go in Winnipeg Sports Talk. We've been, obviously with the Jets run right now, having huge numbers, tons of new people coming in. So, Winnipeg Sports Talk, hit the subscribe button like you do on YouTube, and you can get the podcast as well on any of the feeds. Usually that's out about 3 or 3:30 in the afternoon for your drive home. But, big show today. Ken Weeb from Sportsnet's going to join us, and Jeremy Roenick as well. Perfect timing to have JR on today, because I'm sure he'll have some takes on what we saw last night with the Mark Scheifele hit, as well as the Stanley Cup playoffs. So really looking forward to it.
Good stuff, us. Rock it. We'll be checking it out. Appreciate the time.
Thanks for having me, Rod. Be well.
Hustlerama joining us from Winnipeg Sports Talk.
You're watching Rod Pedersen On Demand. For more of The Rod Pedersen Show, visit rodpedersen.com or follow Rod Pedersen on social media.